Welcome back, guys, to the Builders Coach Show. I'm Jess, I'm your host, and I'm here with Kurt today, and we discuss on this podcast real strategies for builders, success stories, and just tips and tricks, basically. Hi, Kurt. Welcome.
Thanks, Jess. How you doing?
Yes, I'm good, thank you.
Welcome, everyone. Glad to have you guys back.
Yeah, we're back here. If you missed out last week's episode, we were at the Sydney Builder Expo, which was really exciting. So go check it out. But today I want to talk about something quite specific, so the DISC profiling.
Yes, psychometric profiling, and it's such a powerful tool for leadership, building dream teams, basically communication, right? It's a communication tool, and it's invaluable. It's, I would say, essential for anyone wanting to be a great leader and build and lead teams, especially dream teams, quality teams. Peak performance teams, it's essential.
I love this. And as you would know, you obviously use it, you talked about it to your clients, but it's actually also really used in the corporate world also. And there's different variations of it, but let's talk about the one that you use. Can you just explain a little bit, what is it and what are the different characters or profiles that you can have?
Okay, so there's a range of different psychometric profile tools and kits out there. There's plenty of different ones online. There's Myers-Briggs. There's Tony Robbins has one. But we're going to be talking about DISC today. It's D-I-S-C. Yeah. And it was developed in the 1920s by a guy called William Moulton Marston. He was a psychologist, and he came up with this, he through his psychology practice and years of reviewing and studying human behavior, what he determined was that people generally fall into four categories, right? So, and anyone listening, you'll be able to attest to this. People are generally either more extroverted or more reserved, and they either more task orientated or more people orientated. It's more a people's person sort of thing. Yeah. And the thing I like about DISC, it's the easiest, quickest, but very impactful tool out there. You get more detailed, advanced, versions of this psychometric profile, and they do a deep dive. They go into 38 pages and like a really, really deep dive. But DISC is quick, it's easy, it's 10 minutes, and again, just the four categories. So it's important to recognize that we all have all four of these attributes. So if we go through them, so that again, the extroversion, which is the D, so being very decisive, extreme version would be like a Donald Trump type, like just get shit done. And then the I is more about people, and you're extrovert. You all have friends where you can't get the microphone out of their hand, sort of thing. You know what I mean? At parties, they want the attention. They love being around people. So they're sort of assertive and people orientated. And then the S is are you reserved people orientated category. And then the C is task and some more task and reserved. So those are the people like in the back office. Just leave me alone, head down, just looking at the numbers, that sort of thing. So we have all four. Everyone has all four. Some of it's nature, some of it's nurture. So the genetics, 50%, 60-40, whatever, and then your environment shapes you as well. But we are normally dominant in one or two of those, and that's the important thing. And then just finally, we have a certain profile that is our natural profile, which is a combination of nature and nurture. And then there's our work profile. So under pressure in a work situation, that profile can change again. So there's sort of a dichotomy between the two. Some people have the same profile at home naturally and under pressure, and then others have a different profile.
So just to recap that, and I'll tell you, this is the way I know it. I think the D, we call it dominant, and it's really people that are usually very charismatic. They're very good leaders usually because they are decisive, but they make decisions, etc.
And they're not scared to make the wrong decision. Like they'll make decisions. Like not every decision can be right. So it's about assertiveness,
right? Yeah. But the word dominant is a bit it's probably like gives a bit of a bad rep. But yes, the D is that really you would know people that are outgoing, quite charismatic, make good leaders, people follow them, etc. And then the other one, and I just want to recap, is the I. And you say it's people person. I think I is for influencer. And so it's usually people that have also charismatic, also outgoing, but more on the people front. So people would follow them into battle, which also makes extremely good leaders, right? Because they have these crowds of people, following them.
Well, most good leaders have a combination of D and I. So they're assertive, they can make decisions, and they have the ability to interact with people.
Not to say that the other profiles are not great
exactly.
because you always need a good mix of things. But the S, and I forgot what it stands for, but it is people, it's more, so it's on the people front. It's people that are quite, I wouldn't say scared. They are in the introverted space, but also they like to please. And I think it's really for them, it's about collaboration. So they are amazing team players, okay? So they're really good with teams. So they want to like discuss, what's your opinion? Or like,
but they're also less likely to talk up in meetings, and if there's something controversial, they'd rather not say anything.
Well, they're going to be, they're the collaborators. Okay, they're going to be like, they're working the room, getting people's opinion, resolving conflict, trying to like get everyone to collaborate. So great team players as such. Okay. And then
just another thing on the S, they have a long elastic band. So if you know someone who's got you can push them quite far before they snap.
Yeah.
And a D is the opposite, right? Short fuse. Like it doesn't take much for them to get pissed off.
Yeah. And then last but not least is the S?
C.
Oh, C, sorry, the C. It says consciousness, I think. So conscientious. Sorry.
Conscientious, attention to detail. Accountants, lawyers, bookkeepers.
Yeah, and so very detail oriented. But these are your like blue chip team players, because they will be like high quality of work.
Yeah,
they'll be doing their report, their job.
They cross the T's and dot the I's.
To the details. So amazing to have in your teams, right? But so those two are probably more, as you said, introverted. But obviously, everyone has their pros and cons in terms of personalities. And some people are better off suited, like in sales roles, and other people are really amazing team players and conflict resolution people, etc., etc. So
absolutely. And it's important, again, if you look at it, so what is the benefit of DISC and why would you bother learning it? And there's two phases to it. There's one, understanding it, so actually doing the test yourself. And anyone listening will happily share a version of DISC. We've got a version of it that we'll share for free. In fact, if you're interested, just email info@builderscoach.com.au and we'll shoot it across to you. There's an explanation, then a short 10-minute test. And you start by doing it yourself as a leader. So you get self-awareness around what your DISC profile is. So again, you have all four, you're dominant in one or two. So you recognize your own behavioral style, which is what it is. And then that in and of itself allows you to communicate better with other team members, but just people in general. Like there's sales, but also socially, with family. And then in terms of what you were just touching on before, like you need different profiles for different tasks. So horses for courses, right? So you don't want to put someone who's a high I, very people-orientated, extroverted. Again, think of those friends that you know that they just love being around people, they hate being by themselves, and they love the limelight. You don't want to put them in the back office crunching numbers, right? Yeah. You'd have someone like that doing sales. But you'd also want to make sure that they have some D in them, or develop the D. And that's the other important thing to recognize here is one, and we'll talk about the pros and cons and the pitfalls with the with DISC profiling or any psychometric profiling, but it's not a fixed thing. Like you can develop, if you're a high D and an I, which again most leaders are or managers are, but your C is low, which is your attention to detail. You can develop that attention to detail. You can train yourself to pay more attention to detail so that you don't miss things, right?
Yeah, cool. So many things to unpack. So, and I want to reiterate what you just said. And the way I've seen it in the corporate world is that we said that you define your dominant one. So you might be one more, and then there's kind of like a second one in the background. So you'd be dominant in one, and then the second one would be like your second, characteristics, if you want.
So out of interest, what's your profile?
Well, so I want to talk to you about this because, and I'm happy you talk about it, but I do think it changes. So I can tell you, and so a quick story about that. So I can tell you that when I first started my career, and obviously worked in the corporate world, accounting is my background, business management also. So when I started my career, I was definitely the last one, the C, the detail oriented.
Yeah.
And as
Spreadsheet girl.
Yes, definitely. And as I, even in the consulting world also, doing the reports, etc., I'm the one. I mean, you saw me working until midnight, making sure the report is just like, perfect, etc. So there's definitely that is probably like my nature kind of thing.
That's your natural profile, yeah.
But potentially, but I do think that as I've evolved in my career, obviously,
you started doing some presenting. You had to get to the front of the room.
Leadership kicked in, etc. And so and so that's the funny thing is that I've been working, my last job in the corporate world, I was on a project, obviously got to know the people, maybe for a couple of months. And then one of the person that I was leading, so she was in my team, was really into this profiling. And she was like, oh, I bet you I can tell you what you are, Jess, because I'm really good at picking out people. And that's what we used to do in the corporate world also. It's start to be good at, guessing what people are, what's their profile. Anyway, so she was like, okay, I bet you I can tell you what you are. And I was like, okay, yeah, I could try that. And so she told me, and she said, I bet you you're a D or an I.
Yeah.
So the two like extroverted, but I was in obviously leading the team, etc.
So you were in a work environment. And again, that comes back to we have different profiles. Like you at home on a Sunday in your slippers. Is a different profile, right? To you, like Monday morning in a meeting in the front of the room presenting to a group of directors.
Yeah, and just to tell you, so she said that to me, and then the rest of the team, because we were on a work call with different people, they were all like, "Oh yeah, definitely like the D or the I," so extroverted. Either the decisiveness or the influencer, and I was thinking, oh wow, because I've done this thing like probably more than 10 years ago, right? So in my head I had this like, oh well, I know I'm quite analytical and detail oriented, but then they're saying that I thought I think that, as I said, because of my career, because of age also, I probably evolve, so it'd be interesting for me to do it again and see where I fall. But yes, also work and family is different, I guess. Although I do think that as you get older, like probably my detail side of things, like you get good at just knowing what's important and what's not.
Yeah, everyone matches and mirrors anyway. If there's anyone listening that hasn't heard about psychometric profiling, like my question is, where have you been, like living in a lead cave? Because like you said, the corporates use it. Every single corporate company on the planet uses it because this process was discovered 100 years ago. Now there's dozens and dozens of different psychometric profile tests. But so why is it so important? Why do the corporates use it? And a lot of people don't know, but I worked for a major pharmaceutical company in my early 20s. And their culture, and we've spoken about team and the importance of culture and defining values and then employing on values alignment and setting the standard as the leader of the business. And then, horses for courses, finding the right people. This pharmaceutical company that was in 48 countries, their culture was DISC. They used DISC profiling. So everyone from a CEO to the tea lady had to do DISC. They had to, do their profile, understand their profile. That would be tested and workshopped on it and share it. And then they had to apply it all the time. And every 6 months, everyone got tested again. And then we'll talk about it and be workshopped on it. And it's great because once you know your profile, like your awareness opens big time because communication is the response you get. So your ability to communicate improves exponentially. But when you think about it, so why are corporates doing this, right? So corporates really care about people first and foremost, always, only. They're not driven by anything else, right? All they do is show a lot of empathy and compassion to human beings, and that's what drives them. Not, right? They're driven by bottom line. Yeah, they're driven by bottom line. So I know the company I worked for, it saved them over decades because they've been around since the Second World War before, billions of dollars in conflict resolution and also ensuring, because it's part of your recruitment process, which we'll get into as well, like selecting the right people. So just having DISC. So when I say their culture was DISC, they did not have anything else. They pointed to the German company, right? They pointed to one thing. They kept it very simple, and that was the culture, and everyone needed to understand it. But what happened is, I remember first doing it, it became comical because they talk about how, like you mentioned a D being dominant, decisive, assertive. And anyone listening, maybe, again, most business owners are decisive. That's why you need to be decisive to be in business, the hallmark of leadership, right? You can't not make decisions. You'll get slammed by your competitors. So anyone listening is going to have an element of D, whether it's natural or they've developed it. But it's fascinating because an S, so someone who's, people orientated, genuinely cares about people, but is very reserved. When they see a D talk, and I mentioned Trump, when the people that are a high S, they see him as arrogant, rude, overbearing, you know what I mean? Whereas another D, someone else who is like Trump, sees him speak, they go, wow, the confidence, the decisive, there's respect and admiration. So this is why it's so important communication tool, because it's about that self-awareness. So if you're a high D and then you work in with an S, and if you think about, like, where would an S best be suited? Like, we know an I is good in sales, provided they've got some D. Someone who's more detail-orientated, obviously accounting, legal, great to have them there. You don't want to have someone who's not good at detail doing that sort of thing, crossing the T's and dotting the I's. So an S, like complaints departments. I don't know if you've ever phoned a complaints department. I mean, these days it's all like bots and everything else. But if you speak to someone in the complaints department and they're like, hey, you just sense they've got that long elastic band, right? They can accommodate. They're not short fused. And sometimes you do get to complaints department and some guy, yes, what do you want? Well, it's not our fault. Like, but read the terms and conditions. Like, wrong person for the job, right?
Yeah.
So it's interesting that. But so sorry, the point I want to get to is the D that's done DISC, who recognizes that they can come across as rude and arrogant and overpowering to an S. If they're talking to an S who's an employee, that they can then adapt their style, like slow down, change their tonality to what was the guy, Chris Voss, who says use your radio, your FM radio thing, and just slow it down, literally slow down. And that's the matching and mirroring, which most people do naturally anyway. But once you understand it at a deeper level, And the S in return, once they understand that this guy pisses them off because of the profile thing, it actually can become quite comical. I remember that in the corporate world. Do you ever have that where people actually laughed about it? They were like, Jesus Christ, you get under my skin. Like, as soon as you open your mouth, I'll just, I can feel the blood pressure rise in my head.
Cool. Wait, a couple of things that I want to respond to. First of all, I think you're giving D a bad rep. Like, it's not Donald Trump at all. Like, I don't.
No, I said extreme.
No.
Adolf Hitler would be another one on the extreme side, right?
D are really good leaders, and I don't think he's a good leader at all.
Well, scrap that analogy.
Yeah. So you're giving a bad name.
Give us another one then. What's a better example?
Another one.
Barack Obama was.
Exactly.
Mandela, would they be Ds? They had more S. You can see the S in them because you can see you get a sense because they're good statesmen. Like Barack Obama and Mandela are statesmen. You get a sense that they care. I know these people will go bullshit, whatever, and we probably treading into like dangerous waters. Yeah, but
Oprah Winfrey probably.
Oprah Winfrey.
Yeah.
High I.
Yeah.
How's the I in her?
Yes.
She's just like, oh my God, the energy, and you can see she loves camera, lights, action, right? She comes across that way anyway. She seems to enjoy it.
So you're giving a bad rep to the D, which is why I was saying I know it's D for dominant, but it's not about dominance. It's actually so these are really good leaders. They make good decisions. They have like an understanding of like business, etc. So it's really about good leadership, which is not the case of Donald Trump.
Well, you get some Ds can have high S. Maybe, you can have like a big heart and a steel spine.
Yeah,
right?
that's why
it's okay. Yeah, you don't have to be all.
The other thing I was going to say is that, yes, corporates love these kind of things. Clearly, your experience was very...
It's bottom line related though, right?
My experience of it in the corporate world was just... we learned it, but we also taught it as part of one of our
Best way to learn, by the way.
Yeah, but the reason for that is that it was good for us to recognize without asking people whether our clients, which one of these profiles our clients were on. So if we had meetings with CFOs and or CEOs, CFOs, it would be really good for us. And usually CFOs would be like a detail oriented.
Yeah.
But not always, because obviously a CFO, like especially in really big companies, would be also a portion of D, right? But based on that, so if we were taught it so that we could recognize in a room who we had in front of us, and as you said, it's about tailoring your communication to hit the sweet spot with each one of these people, right? So you will not sell the same way to a C, detail-oriented. The C, I'm giving them the 100-page report for them to review and talk to them again 2 days later to say, hey, what are your questions about the report, right?
Absolutely,
That's how you would sell to this person.
It's invaluable in sales.
But if I had a CEO who was a D, I'd be like, hey, I wrote this report, but here are the 5 things you need to know about it. And I'd be doing a quick presentation about the 5 things that they need to know.
So just on that.
And it would be like, tack, what do you think? So different way. So that's why we were taught it. And yeah, as you said, communication, the way you talk to these people is very different.
So just to jump in there, because you just touched on something really, really important, because it's invaluable in sales, right? You can't go all D. You can't just have one setting. And again, people naturally intuit that if you're speaking to someone, you can see and hear and sense an S. They generally speak slower, and they sort of think in between sentences sometimes, versus a D that is just, bop, let's go, cut to the chase. So in a sales situation, a D, when you get there, like, okay, what's happening? What's the price? Show me the number. Let's get this done. In fact, Ds are often easy to sell to because they'll go, look, I don't like, no, I'm not doing this. Boom. So you get a quick no. And then, conversely, you get a quick yes as well. Okay, let's do it. Let's get cracking. How do I pay? So it's great from that perspective. An S may take forever to make a decision. But
an S would be like bringing all their peers or asking all their second in charge. They say, hey, come to the meeting with me because I want to know your opinion about this. That would be an S, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. So you spot on. How you sell to them is really important. But I want to just talk about information, because we talk about information-based sales and marketing and value management, and like in our typical 6-step sales process, there's a frequently asked questions document that goes out. That's 12 pages, a capability statement that could be 25 pages, a value management proposal or solution, there's another 11 or 12 pages, and then there's the actual prelim agreement or whatever that gets presented. So all this information is getting sent out. So people may be thinking, okay, so for a D, do I need to have like a abridged version, like just a bullet point thing? And then for what about the detail people? The beautiful thing is, like if you think of optimization and what's the absolute best you could do in terms of education-based sales and marketing and presenting information, would be like a book. Okay, if you published a book on, whether it's Hampton Homes, Passive House, High Performance Homes, whatever your niche is, building on difficult sites on the coast, if you gave that to, and we have about 14, 15 clients that we've co-authored books with, right? When you send that out to someone who's a prospect, now let's see how it lands with like a C, detail person, is going to read it cover to cover. They also the people that read the instruction manual, by the way. They get a new TV or something. Before setting it up, they read the instruction manual from front to back, right? And a D just rips it open and just plugs it in, and then it's like click.
Read the instructions.
Who, me?
Yeah, don't start.
There's just to be clear.
Who do you think you are? Sorry, we should have cleared this out before. Who do you think you are on the profile?
I'm a DI, and I've trained myself to have there's a kick, right? You see on the graph, there's a graph with disc. So I'm a high D and I, and then I've trained myself to have a high C as well. Because there's actually a term. We'll come back to the book thing, but there's a millionaire's hook. Have you heard of the millionaire's hook?
Yeah. No.
So it's DI, and then, because on the disc graph, it goes like there's DISC, and then you get the pauper's putter and the millionaire's hook. And I remember this on day one when we did our profiles, and they said the pauper's putter, someone's got high D, so very decisive, take lots of action, but they're not paying attention to detail, so they miss a lot and they crash and burn. people go under. They have lots of ideas and then they miss things and see you later. So that's why it's porpoise putter. They lose a lot of money. The most successful business owners on the planet, they have DI, decisive people skills, and then they read the contracts and pay attention to detail. So I was like, okay, I want to be, in that category. So this is where it is flexible. You can train it. But back to the book. So you send a book out as part of your sales process. And a C is going to get it and read it cover to cover, like the instruction manual. And if it's got quality content, which all our books do, you earn credibility and respect. The person's like, wow, especially in this industry, right? Like, who writes a book? Who's got time to write a book? No one's got time to write a book. You never will. It'll never be a good time to do it. You just got to do it, right? And then if you do, you get a lot of respect for it and credibility. So let's look at a D, someone who's just like not going to want to read the detail. They will pick the book up. They'll probably read the table of contents. They might flick through to page 60 to one of the areas that they found most relevant or something they're interested in, and they might just flick through and maybe read the back cover. But they will still respect and appreciate what it takes to write a book, maybe even more so because they're a D. They'll go, oh my God, this guy's, they've actually bothered to sit down and create some valuable content that's going to help people better understand what's involved and unpack some of the complexity. So I just want anyone listening to know that having a lot of content is good for, it covers all four bases. And I mean, you mentioned if you're doing a presentation, you go, here's the 5 bullet points. The way to do that in writing is you'll have, if there are, say, 5 paragraphs, you'll have a heading in thicker, bold font at the top of each of the paragraphs. So a D will just skim through those headings. They won't read the detail, whereas the C will actually read everything, read the detail, because they can't not do it. But it is only about 9% of the population that falls into that C category. And those people, you cannot give them enough information. You could send them 10 books, they'd read all of them. Yeah. They'd keep it in the bathroom. Yeah.
Cool. I just wanted to come back to something you said earlier because I do think it's important. And as you said, the corporate world use it a lot, etc. It does, and that's maybe my caveat to this, is that it does give you a bit of a label. And although that is good because it's easier to deal with people when you've got an idea of, where they sit on this spectrum. I'm going to call it spectrum. But it changes. And you can't just treat everyone in the same way, even if they are, this is a D and this is a T too. So that's like, obviously there's still like, fine tuning around that. And I find it a bit dangerous sometimes where people just, stamp you or label you with, that's who you are. Because I'm all about growth mindset, because I think you can learn different things. I think you can act in different ways. I think you can change your communication depending on the people you've got in front of you, et cetera, et cetera. So
that's one of the risks. That's one of the risks associated with this. And I've been, decades, been using it myself, applying it, and then teaching it as well. But it can come down to people labeling. And then the wording they would use, and this is about having a growth versus fixed mindset, is they go, well, that's just the way I am.
Yeah.
I'm not someone who pays attention to detail, or that's just the way I am. Yeah. I'm just like loud and in your face and whatever. No, it's not the case. We can adapt. That's the whole thing. You want to be like a chameleon. And the best salespeople do this. They know they adapt and change. They'll lower the speed of how they speak or increase it. And we've all done it before. Like, you've been in an environment where you feel great, like say socially, right? And then all of a sudden you come out of your shell and you the life of the party, right? And you're vibing with people and you're having a good time. And then there's other times where you don't want to be around people. You just want to chill and you're more reserved and you just don't want to do that, right? So everyone's done that before. And sometimes it could depend on your mood or whatever else, but we have the ability to adapt. And when you're dealing with team members, when you're communicating, and then sales and marketing is about communicating, understanding DISC is invaluable. So those are massive areas, right?
Yeah. So let's go into details then, because I think two areas which is awesome is really team and how you're building your team.
Yeah, I was going to say, let's talk about recruitment and some specific examples of how DISC has worked for some of our clients.
Sorry, just to sum it up, I was going to say 3 things. team composition, recruitment, and then communication. I think these are the 3 areas that are the most valuable.
Well, sales massive.
Sales, yeah.
Like understanding who you're selling to and talking to and adapting accordingly. But building a team, which is recruitment.
Yeah.
So attracting the right people for the role. Obviously, we employ an attitude over skill, but you want to ideally attract someone that has natural tendencies, a natural profile towards that task, whether it's sales or numbers crunching or whatever. But there's also the team interacting with each other.
Yeah.
So disharmony within the team. And that's what that corporate entity that I worked for was doing. They were making sure that there was none of this BS, because their philosophy was once you were employed, you're part of a family. They had that philosophy. I know there's other people that have more of a meritocracy approach. They were very, once you're in, you're in. And so they wanted to minimize the disharmony between people, which would normally be between a D and an S. And what they found is when they educated the D and S on their profiles and how that affected the people around them, it dissolved the tension. It's fascinating. Yeah. Actually, literally, in most cases, became comical. Because I start thinking about people that are like, oh my God, my brother-in-law's like that, or my cousin, they just get under my skin. Some people irk you and you don't even know why. Like they haven't actually done anything, but they just piss you off. And it's normally the conflict in profile. And then once you get it, awareness is curative.
So we obviously recommend people to do their own profile so that they understand.
Step one is that,
who they are. That's a bit of a general
just
statement,
where
but
they fit
where
within
they
that.
fit, how do they work with things, etc.
And also, it's been widely tested. This is not like theory and maybe it's a thing and maybe it's not. No, it's over 100 years, right? Yeah. That it's been looked at. So it's got the stamp of approval by every corporate company out there.
So step one, do it for yourself, obviously to understand yourself, also to see where do you want to improve, work
Absolutely,
on things.
yeah.
Especially if you come back as an S or a C, which are more of a team player, and if you're the leader or the business owner, you probably want to try to get into those upper quadrants with a D and a I. So those are good things for you to know. So where do you need to improve, I'd say. But when we talk about teams, so recruitment maybe first, do you recommend people to do or ask people to actually do the test?
In certain situations, absolutely.
Okay.
So I'll give you an example, right? So I had a guy who was employing leadership role, supervisor, someone who manages jobs. And had about 20 applicants, narrowed it down to probably 8. They had a group interview. This was in the metro area, so and it was during a time when there were people looking for work. And eventually got down to 2 guys. He couldn't split them. So their resumes were good. We've done a pod on recruitment. People can go check it out. We're talking about our recruitment process, and then reference checking. Really important to do reference checking, right? Yeah. But these guys were. He's like, I was working with this builder, and it's like, I don't know which guy to choose. So then I said to him, well, let's do psychometric profiling. Let's do DISC. And now you need to ask for permission. You can't just bring someone in and go, hey, I need you to complete this form. You need to explain to them what it is. Yeah. And there's an information sheet, if anyone wants the test that we've got, which is it's a version of DISC, but you can get DISC online, just Google it, and you can pay for the online version. And he did that, and one of the guys had more D, and the other was just more of an S dominant personality type. And it was a no-brainer. We went to the guy with the D because everything else was equal or the same. But, anyone listening will know, if you run in job sites, there's going to be a time where there's chaos. People don't turn up. You're going to have subcontractors that try and push you around. Because they're not employees, they've got their own businesses. So you need to be able to deal with that and be decisive and, make decisions, on your feet, think on your feet. So, he went with the natural.
That's a bit harsh, right?
It's harsh, but it is reality-based thinking.
And basically these guys had to do the test, and based on that test, they know whether they're going to be kicked out or not. They know whether they're going to be given the job or not. How do you know that test was filled out properly? And not in a way that they're like, hey.
That's a good question.
If I say that I'm more collaborative, maybe I'm going to get the job instead of, and then actually the guy came back, he came back with an S because he was like, I'm just going to show that I like to collaborate with people, etc.
So that's a good question. So when someone does a test, there's a couple of rules. Number one, they have to be as honest as humanly possible. Like look at it, because it asks, which category do you fit in? It's almost like multiple choice. And it's asking you, like in a work situation, are you generally more this way or that way, So that's communicated clearly, right? Two, they've only got like 10 minutes to do the test, so it's under pressure. So they can't really think it through. And it literally says, don't think about your answers too much. Just whatever comes to mind first is going to be the right answer. Plus, the test is not... It's not a one-dimensional thing. It actually double checks. So it doubles back on itself just in case someone maybe exaggerated or got something wrong. And then finally, if someone lies on their test, which you can, people can lie and say I'm this but I'm not. They can just say the opposite, right? There's a probationary period when you work for a company, right? They're going to find that out very quickly. And you're going to be found out to be a liar, which that's not great for your CV, right? So... but obviously, so hopefully the person that's come to work for you, if you've done the reference checks, they're credible. They're not someone that's a charlatan, right? That's trying to pull the wool. But, in this case, they both had, a decent amount of S and I and enough C. Attention to detail is important as well, but the one guy's D was a lot higher. So, it was a recruitment tool. Great recruitment tool. Have you got an example of when it worked really well? And that guy turned out to be the right choice, by the way.
I'll tell you about it. Some other things that we used to do. Well, not used to do, but we spoke about agile methodology. I don't know if you remember, but the daily stand-ups. We spoke about daily stand-ups. That comes from what we call agile methodology, way of working, which really came out of IT companies back like years ago, and then now it's been applied across different industries, etc. Anyway, to tell you, so agile methodology is like a whole methodology, and there's a lot of different tools, including the daily stand-ups. But one of the other tools in there is actually...
Is that because things are moving quickly? How to stay on top of things when they're moving at warp speed?
And so it came from the IT industry because... where even if you like, building an app or things like this, you want to do it fast, right? Mm-hmm. And so therefore this methodology is really fast. It's not like old school where you go like, these are my requirements. And then there's like a massive amount of time where, people are like doing, customizing, etc. And then afterwards you get a product. Here it's really like fast little incremental deliveries. Mm-hmm. Anyway, so as part of that, you put teams together, and it's called like in sprints. So you've got teams that are called scrums, and the scrums work in sprints, and usually a sprint is a 1 week or a 2 week period. Okay. And so this scrum team is actually defined by people that are completely different profiles. So you'd have your business analyst, and then your IT person, and then your whatever, depending on what you're working, obviously.
Well, so that's interesting. So they all complement each other. Is that right?
Yes. And none of them are the same profile.
And is that I'd imagine that's because, and I don't remember us talking about this, by the way, but is that to ensure nothing slips through the cracks? Because if you've got someone covering every base.
Yeah, that's right.
Because the big corporates aren't there to oversee everything. So they put these teams together that then
they put these small teams that all have a very specific role, and they all have a specific role and a specific way of working, and they will all look at it. So imagine you've got the IT guy, as I said, the business analyst. So the business analyst is going to look at whatever. If you're looking at an app, he'll be like, okay, is this good for the customer? Does that work well? If I am the customer, does that work well for the customer? And then you've got the QA guy, and the QA guy is going to look at it from a different angle. And then you've got the IT guy, and he's going to look at it in a different angle. And then you've got the guy that's like all about efficiency for speed, and he's going to look at it in a different. So they all have.
And you forgot one, the guy that's driving the
Oh,
team.
and
You'd
then
have the
there's
one because
there's the one
those
guy
guys
that's
would
gonna-
not be able to make a decision. So you need one guy who's going to go, okay, we're doing this.
Yeah.
We've done the analysis, and this is what we're doing. Boom.
Yeah, and so the teams are small,
Yeah.
but very very lean, but they all have a specific characters, like they
love it.
have a specific role, etc. And that works well. And then obviously you can have like 10 small teams, right?
Yeah.
Because so instead of have one big team where we've got like 10 IT designers and 2 QA person and 2 leaders. Well, no, you just have all these like little pockets of teams, and they're all working really fast on these things. Yeah.
If you translate that over to construction, so if you think of the construction team and let's go through the whole gamut from pre-construction all the way through to job delivery. So you've obviously got your guys on site where you've got the supervisor that are managing the trades. They also need to program the jobs as well. So they need the D, but also the attention to detail with programming, making sure nothing gets missed. They need to have the people skills to do call forwards, to phone people, have relationships with trades. Nothing happens in a straight line. They're going to have to call them and call in favors from some of them and nurture the relationship as well. But if we go pre-construction, you've got your design team, you've got the architects, the designers, the estimators, high attention to detail, can't afford to miss anything. There's the contracts. And then during the job as well, there's on-site versus office-based team, the contracts administrators. And then, the project managers that interact with the architect and the client during the build. And we've spoken about, female project managers who tend to have more finesse with communication. So you can see how what you just described there in the corporate world you can tie that into construction. And construction covers all those. Like there's a lot going on where aligning the right people can be game changer. Right?
And that's where I think I'm saying that I think as the owner of your business, when you are hiring people, I think it's really smart to be hiring people that are going to complement each other and to just be really thoughtful in terms of like, well, what do I need and how are these people going to work together, and not have people that are all the same disc profile.
But you know what's fascinating, right? Because there's going to be someone listening who's got someone on their team who shouldn't be there. They're underperforming. Okay. Now, imagine the scenario where the business owner is like a high S. Yeah. All right. And for an S, like I'm not a high S, but hands down the most difficult thing in business is getting rid of people. Like if you have to cut someone or fire someone, like most people, it's agonized, horrible. I think it's in our human nature, like we herd animals, like firing someone this is horrible. However, what's the chance that the person that's underperforming, maybe they're not quite suited to that profile? So maybe like imagine like someone who's a task, reserved task type person. They're not a people person, and they're in sales. Yeah. So every day it's like agonizing. They're like the hermit crab. They've got to come out of their comfort zone. They've got to force themselves to be extroverted. They go home, and when they get home, they just flop on the couch, and it's just like every day they're having to convert over, which would be exhausting, right? Yeah. Much easier to just do your natural profile. But then the S business owner can see they're not performing, but they agonizing over to letting them go. Whereas, if they just had the D, if they had the awareness, like, hey, this person's probably not best suited to this role, they would be much happier and better off in another role. Yeah. And then you could handle it with some empathy and compassion, but be decisive about it as well. Yeah. Because I've seen that happen a fair bit.
I was going to say, I would challenge saying like, oh, this person is not right for the company, or maybe this person is just not right for that specific role. Yeah. And can you, because if they still have the skills and etc., can you put them in a different role, or would it be better suited doing something else? So it's not just about letting someone go, but maybe if you just change things around a little bit, then this person can actually flourish and be happy in the role that they're doing, and you get all the benefits from that.
Exactly. So we're talking about, so this all ties in and goes back to building a dream team, right? And team dynamics and how they work together and getting the best out of your people. And by far and away, the most important ingredient for success in business is people, right? There's no doubt. So interesting story. Ray Dalio? Yeah. The guy made a shit ton of money during the GFC when the market tanked. There's that movie about it with was it Bradley Cooper, all those guys, called The Big Short.
Oh, okay. Yes.
Where they saw what was happening, right? Where where the banks were over leveraged, And they shorted the market, and he made a whole lot of money. But that's just one of the areas where he made a ton of money. But he had one of the most successful, and still does, I believe, investment firms on the planet. They had to stop taking clients. They had too much money to manage. So he's got a great book called Principles. In that book, he talks about how he started growing his business and what he did. And I know this is true for some of the people that I work with. He started employing family and friends. Like as a crew, he's like, hey, do you want to come work with us? And then he discovered psychometric profiling, right? So he did, I can't remember whether it was DISC or Myers-Briggs, but the impact that had on him was so profound, because all of a sudden he realized, hold on, there are people that are naturally inclined to do better in certain roles. So he started obsessing over it to the extent that he developed his own psychometric profiling system, and he developed a meritocracy. There's a whole culture around it where he optimized psychometric profiling in his business to build a meritocracy where he completely dominated his space. And it's a fascinating read. Like if anyone's interested, check out Principles, Ray Dalio. But it's testament to everything we're talking about, and using psychometric profiling to build the best possible team. And then obviously, performance and results off the back of that.
I want to talk, I know we skimmed over it, but let's just talk a little bit more about communication when it comes to these profiles and conflict resolution.
Yeah.
Okay. Because I think that's a really powerful tool, right? If you understand who you have on your team and how they function, and then you come there's conflict everywhere, right? Like things happen, life happen, and people, get pissed off, and you've got issues, right?
Yeah.
So, but if you understand who you've got on your team, how they act, and when you do hit a conflict, how to overcome it quicker using these profiles, I think that will be like a really valuable tool.
Yeah, as the owner of the business, you may know, if people do the DISC profile, there's profiles that conflict, like a D and an S. Like a D is going to piss an S off, and vice versa. The D's like, you're so slow, like just come, you make some decisions. Even just once, so the business owner could put them in different teams, so there's less conflict that way, or he could get them to do the test so they get the self-awareness. Even if one of them, like say the D recognizes this person's an S and he knows his own profile, he can adapt and be the chameleon to make the S more comfortable and even make it comical, right? So even just one person in an interaction having the awareness can dissolve the conflict resolution.
Yeah.
If both of them understand, if the S understands, hey, I'm an S, he's a D, and you know what, that's okay. And you know what, we need a D. That guy's making decisions. He's got balls. He doesn't, because some of his decisions are wrong, and then there's backlash. Think about coaches, of professional teams and presidents or prime ministers of countries. Like they can't get every decision right. So, in fact, if you look at like presidents, every single decision they make, the opposition party has to disagree with it, everything. Even if they go, hey, we're going to give money to charity. Oh, but you should give it to these kids, orphans instead. So that's all they copying. And so an S would absolutely shrivel up and die with that. It's just too much. So you need Ds, but then Ds recognize you need S's as well. You need these people that can, that are very nurturing and gentle and understanding and move a lot slower and have a longer elastic band that can deal with that. They are good at conflict resolution, probably therapists, I'd imagine, where they can hear people out and, they're not just going to go, hey, just do this, just get over it, build a bridge and get over it. They,
Yeah. Sorry. Where are we up to? I know we
so conflict resolution,
different things.
I think we've covered a lot of bases. Just in closing, because I think we're getting close to wrapping this one up.
Yeah.
It is important to, first and foremost, if you're going to have a look at this, which I think everyone should, again, if you want to be the best version of yourself, you want to be the best leader, you absolutely need to do some sort of psychometric profiling just for that self-awareness. Like above all, know yourself, know your profile, and then decide whether you want to introduce it to your team for conflict resolution, for team dynamics, and then obviously recruitment. It's a powerful tool there as well. But there was.
Actually, I wanted to say something else.
It has a lot of applications. Like it's very powerful. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sales. that we spoke about?
Yeah, I think in a traditional way of seeing things, D is obviously like a really good leader. And I think if you think of like the way people ran the business before, I think there would have been a lot of Ds out there being successful, etc. But I think, you know how times are changing, and then this idea of key person of influence from Daniel Priestley actually talks about it, and how actually people that are coming out on top now are really influencers, right? And like the whole idea of having your own brand and being an influencer. I don't know how else to put it. But so I wonder if now maybe in this next generation, as we move forward, really the I is going to be more of those, we're going to see more of these I influencers being more successful and having all these multi-million-dollar
But those I's I would argue would have to have D. Because to decide to be a key person of influence, to be an influencer, which I don't like the word influencer, because you get these influencers that just go around the world, just like look at me, just photograph.
No,
So
I
it's
don't
more
mean
an
in the sense
influencer
of
is more
Instagram. I mean like we talk. The I is really about having that people-oriented aspect, being really charismatic and have people follow them into battle.
but some people do that for the sake of it. Like, I'm really good looking and look at me, and I'm promoting different brands. I'm talking about someone who has established themselves, like say in a certain, like, I know a guy who's respected influencer with Passive House. So he's learned a lot about Passive House. He's built a lot of passive homes really, really well, has great processes, best practice. So architects and builders in that space go to him for advice and ask him his opinion on things. So he's an influencer based on credibility and the results. So it's like a cardiologist, where other cardiologists call him, hey, what do you think about this?
Yeah.
That's sort of influencer, right? That's what we're talking about. We're not talking about someone who's a show pony he's just trying to do a Kardashian thing. They actually have credibility in a certain space. And that is, invaluable to be able to do that. But I think to do that, you've got to put yourself out there. And immunity to criticism is possibly, I've heard people point to it as the single most important attribute for success. And I'm not talking about just average success. If you want to be, and the question is, could you be the best in the world at what you do? You are going to get, it doesn't matter who you are, Mother Teresa, Nelson Mandela, the critics they have are absolutely brutal. And in this day and age, everything's online. Like, you're going to see it. I mean, I know a lot of celebs don't look at the critics or don't want to, and professional sports people don't do it for the exact reason that it doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter how strong you think you are. Yeah. It does impact, right? So I think there needs to be an element of D. I think, you tell me, or you think an IS could put themselves out there and handle the inevitable criticism that comes?
Yeah, I don't think D is the only profile that can handle criticism.
I'm not sure the INS would make a decision to put themselves the line of criticism.
So the S, definitely not, because the S are the people that are going to go and ask everyone what they think.
Right.
Okay. They're going to say, hey, what do you think about this idea? Should we do it? Should we not do it? That's the S, right? They want to collaborate. They want to know everyone else's opinion, and then they're going to decide what they're going to do, right? So they're definitely not an S.
Well, I think you're being very D right now with me.
All our conversations from now on are just going to be like, well, right now you're being very...
You're not being very S right now, Jess. You're being quite coming over the top of me.
I think you clearly focused for the last 20 years on your DI and C, and you probably dropped the ball on the S. Your empathy and collaboration are really
I need to crank that up. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, the good news is it can change, right? We can adapt and change.
Yeah, I think it's been seriously neglected. But... moving on from that, so I think that influencers are outgoing. I think they make really good leaders, and especially in the day especially in this generation where the people aspect is so important, right? Having your own brand is really important. Before, we talked about this before, right? Coca-Cola before was a big company, etc. They were leaders pushing that brand, etc. Now Coca-Cola means it's just a brand, but the brands today that have a strong identity, okay, with a key person of influence, okay, those are the brands that are coming out strong and that being really successful, and that is I driven.
Okay.
That's how I'm seeing
Well,
it.
yeah, I can totally relate to that. It's they people who can connect well with and resonate well with lots of people, and they're less likely to polarize, whereas a D would probably polarize more. But it comes back to like a Nelson Mandela, right? Is like a very, loving, kind, empathetic, compassionate individual, which I disagree. I don't think I completely lack that, Jess. I think you should take that back. Take it back.
We can take it offline.
Yeah.
But yeah. Hey, I had one question here. Sorry, we didn't go through these different questions. But one thing I did want to close off with is, do you see any mistakes that people do when using the DISC profile?
Yes, they lock in. They go, oh, this is just the way I am. So fixed mindset, don't lock in. Know that you can change. And then also they look at someone else and they go, oh, well, that person's like that. That's not true. They can adapt and change. But ideally, if whatever your natural profile is, that should be the career path or the roles and tasks that you align with. It makes sense. Like if you're naturally good at something, you should attenuate your strengths. Don't try and work on optimizing your weaknesses and forget about your strengths, right?
Yeah, and that's why I think doing the test again and again, like redoing the test, is probably like a good idea.
Yeah,
you might change.
Some people, the other mistake, they do the test, they understand it because it makes perfect sense, and then they'll stop there. You've got to keep applying it, application, and have fun with it. Go out socially when you go out to like. You go meet, you at a wedding or a 21st or whatever it is, and you get introduced to someone, ask yourself, okay, can I read their profile? Are they more extroverted, reserved? And then adapt and mirror and see if you can build rapport with them, and then you'll develop the skill set and then apply it in sales and communicating with a team.
That brings me to my last thing that I want to mention, and we spoke about it just before, but what do you think of people that they think they are a D, for example, but everyone in their team think that they're actually, a C or an S.
Yes, we spoke about that off air right before. The
discrepancy between what the person actually think they are. And imagine you go through the test, right? And they go like, oh my God, I'm D's probably not a good, but like, oh, I'm a S, right? So I'm high on the collaboration. I'm a great team player, etc. And then all the actual team players are like, no, this guy is.
Yeah, so I've had business owners get their team to do their profile.
Yeah.
So do this profile, do the test for me. Yeah. What do you think of me? And then they get feedback, which is quite ballsy because you don't know what you're going to get back. But yes, if someone sees themselves as a DI, but they're actually like a CS or vice versa, run. You want to run because what that is, whether it's socially or in a relationship or for work, because all that's saying to you, and this is where it's good from a recruitment perspective, is that they have a disconnect with reality, right? The people that have the closest relationship with reality are the most successful people on the planet. They see the world for what it actually is. No one really sees it for what it is, but as close as you can. So if someone is seeing themselves differently to how the world sees them, they have a disconnect, which normally means there's something else going on, right? Some undiagnosed condition, or it's not going to be healthy or conducive to peak performance and good results.
Yeah. I mean, the caveat here is just to make sure that when you do go through the test, you make sure you look at yourself. Are you, from a work perspective or from a family
Absolutely.
perspective?
When you do the test from work perspective,
they can be
it'll tell you, any test you do, they'll position you to, okay, when you answer these questions, think of yourself at work, Monday morning, 8 o'clock in the office. How would you respond to this? It's not, again, you on the weekend. Or on holiday on a beach
But
somewhere.
It is funny. Imagine you're going through the test and you're like, Monday morning at work, the question is like, are you decisive? Are you doing it? And you're like, yes. But all your teams are like, no, this guy's like useless at making decisions.
Yeah, he's just deferring decisions, procrastinating.
He's like terrible. Big red flag.
Massive.
Okay.
All right, I think we're going to wrap it.
Yeah,
Let's leave it there.
Awesome.
All right, guys, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you again soon. Cheers.
Thanks, bye.